Have you noticed lately that when you look around, almost everyone these days has got some ink, man? It's because getting tatted up is no longer frowned upon in society like it used to be. Actually, the roles have reversed. If you don't have tattoos in 2023, somebody might think that you just crawled out from under a rock somewhere. Some people might even think that you're kind of strange because getting tattoos have become the new norm. But what about when it comes to the church? What about when it comes to Christians? Do the same rules still apply? Should Christians be getting tattoos? Look, can I be a Christian and go get tatted up like Post Malone, Adam Levine, or better yet, your favorite pop sensation, Justin Bieber? What does the Bible say when it comes to tattoos? Is the Bible silent on this issue? That's what we are going to consider in today's video, whether or not it's cool for Christians to ink up their whole body like Wiz Khalifa said. Now, most of the time when I hear the topic of tattoos being addressed, there is a passage of scripture where everyone likes to start at, and that is Leviticus chapter 19, verses 28. And I'm going to read that in the King James translation. And it says this: "Ye shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks upon you. I am the Lord." Now, I hope all you King James only people love the fact that I chose to use that translation. But if I'm honest, that wasn't for you. I chose the King James to start because most of the modern translations already have the word tattoos instead of the word marks, which I'm not ready to get into that just yet. The first thing that I want to address is the initial stance that most take on this scripture and the context of it in this current time period. Most say that it is a part of the Levitical law or the Mosaic law. And so as being the New Testament church and the New Testament believers, then automatically that makes us not required as believers to practice this, regardless if the text is referring to tattoos or not. But here's what's interesting. Those same people won't say that because it's the Levitical law, making it no longer applicable, that now it's okay for a man to sleep with another man as he does a woman, which was prohibited in Leviticus chapter 18:22. At least I hope they won't say that. But you never know these days. I definitely don't think that they would say that it's okay for a man or a woman to have sexual relations with an animal. Or I would really love to hear them bring that same energy of defending tattoos and defend the right for a man to be able to have sexual relationships with his father's sister. Leviticus chapter 18:12. Or how New Testament believers who are free from the weight of the law can now sacrifice children to a false god. Leviticus chapter 18, verses 21. I mean, because it's Levitical law and it doesn't apply to Christians because we're above that. So all of these things are okay, right? Well, you can believe that if you want to. But what I'm trying to get you to see is that building a case why it's okay or not okay to do something because we are no longer held to the standard of the Old Testament is a very weak case to build. The reality is that there are still things that God ordained in Leviticus and the Old Testament that are absolutely applicable today. And they serve the same purpose, which is to set apart the people of God from all the other people that are not in covenant relationship with God. Could that be the reason why Christians shouldn't get tattoos today? To set them apart from the people that are not in covenant relationship with God? I don't know. You tell me. Seriously, leave a comment below. Tell me what you think about that. Now, let's address this text from a different perspective. Let's consider the overall context of this passage and if it's referring to tattoos or just cuts for the dead. How about a quick study? Let's consider the word marks. That word marks comes from the word kethobith, which means an imprint or a tattoo. And that is derived from the word kathab, which means to write. I got this from my Strong's Concordance, by the way. So in this passage, when it refers to cuts and imprints, the Bible is distinguishing two different types of body markings. And the latter is associated with the Latin word stigmatus, which is where we get our word stigma, which means marks of disgrace. And this practice was used on slaves to distinguish slaves from everybody else that wasn't a slave. Now, you can dig deeper into this yourself, but for time's sake, I'm not going to go any further into that. But what I want to note is that the way the Israelites interpreted this was not to practice this form of ancient tattooing. Why? Because God's people would no longer be identified as slaves after leaving Egypt. Even though they would still be captured and go into bondage for their rebellion to God, they would still no longer be considered slaves. Fast forward to today, and Jewish people still do not believe in the practice of getting tattoos. Last thing we need to do is look at this from a cultural perspective. Just to set the record straight, tattoos have been around for a very long time. We know this because the oldest mummy found with tattoos is a mummy named Otzi the Iceman, and his body is said to be 5,300 years old. His tattoos are marks on his body that are very similar to the form of tattoos today, just using a different form of ink. But nonetheless, back in those ancient days, homies were getting tatted up, man. So we have a 5,300-year-old mummy with tats, and the Bible itself is estimated to be close to 3,400 years old. The earliest manuscripts being from about 2,000 years ago. So it's highly possible that the Bible meant tattoos just as we know them today. You know what? What we really have to consider when thinking about getting tattoos is what's the purpose? When you look into the origins of tattoos, besides being used as a way to brand slaves, as we already discussed, tattoos in the ancient days were used for spiritual purposes, and not Christian spiritual purposes, but rather Egyptian spiritual purposes, which we know involve multiple gods and occultism. And over the years, many mummies from Egypt with tattoos that were discovered actually were mostly women. And it's said that they were most likely women of the night. And they would get tattoos as amulets of protection, and they used them as spiritual charms to bring good luck. So from a cultural standpoint, the origins of tattoos are not good, and even in our modern culture, all the initial associations with tattoos were not known to be associated with Christians, let alone wholesome people. Tattoos have just recently become this thing where we are making it acceptable in all walks of life, but it always wasn't that way. Speaking of the church, the Second Council of Nicaea actually banned all body markings as pagan practice in AD 787. So as for me and my house, Tattoos are not going to be a part of our theology. As for you, I pray you take this truth and make the right decision with it. But the truth speaks for itself. Christians should not be getting inked up. We need to live our lives set apart for God, holy unto the Lord, and not be trying so hard to blend in with everybody else in the world. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about those tattoos you got there, man? I see those tattoos. But actually, all the tattoos that I have are from before I got saved, and they're over 13 years old. It's my testimony, and God can use it to reach people, but I definitely won't be going out to get my favorite scripture tatted on the other side of my neck here. Now, it's about time that I drop off, but thanks for listening to this video. Don't forget to become a part of the I Eat Manna family, where I exhort, admonish, teach Jesus. If you want more videos like this, hey, I got another one coming up. Click it and be blessed. I'm out.